Hey, Hope here with another video today. This time we are going over the Omega Protocol Phase 3. First, we start off with a transition. Players will be assigned debuffs. The boss will use a radiating AoE starting from the center of the arena. It hits 4 times, then starts again from the center of the arena, hitting 4 additional times. Be careful, because the AoE does not line up with the floor design. While all of this is going on, Omega will spawn 3 arms, and then 3 more arms. These will blow up in medium-sized AoEs in the same order they spawned. As the second set of arms explode, the debuffs from earlier go off. So, how do we resolve all of this? First, line up west to east at the south side of the arena. Debuffs will go out. 4 players will get a dark debuff called Sniper Cannon Fodder. This is a solo AoE on expiration. 2 players will get a light debuff called High-Powered Sniper Cannon Fodder. This is a stack on expiration. 2 players will receive nothing. They are to pair with the 2 stack debuffs. Have the 4 dark players move up, nothing players stay still, and light players move south. You can now see who else has your debuff and your position left to right. We will send the dark players north and keep the nothing and light players south. Sorting yourself out left to right based on where you are in the lineup, we want to start in these positions. Next, make sure to dodge the first wave of radiating AoEs and stand at the edge of the arena. You can position yourself directly between the 2 arms if you did not notice which appeared first. As the third AoE hits in front of you, one of the arms will be exploding. Sidestep the AoE, then run into and down into the radiating AoE as well. During this movement, your debuff will resolve. If you did the spreads properly, these will automatically be done correctly. And that's it for the transition. You've officially made it to Phase 3. Next is Hello World. Start by moving to your clock spots. As the cast resolves, players will receive a slew of debuffs. I'm going to cover what each thing does individually first. All players receive the following with various timers. Remote regression. This is known as a short tether or blue tether. When you move too far away, you explode. Local regression. This is known as a far tether or Christmas tether. When you're too close, it explodes. Latent synchronization bug. This is requiring you to be hit by the shared sentence before its duration ends. 2 players receive shared sentence. When this expires, you need to share the damage with another player. Any player hit receives the shared sentence debuff. 2 players will have defamation. This creates a very large explosion centered on the player. Any player hit receives the defamation debuff. 2 players receive latent defect. These players need to be hit by defamation. 2 players receive no additional debuff. Additionally, 2 players receive critical underflow bug, and 2 players receive critical performance bug. These will expire and create a small AoE around the player. Many players refer to this as rot or Nissi. When it expires, you need to have soaked a corresponding tower. They are color-coded to match, or the explosion will kill you. It's important this is passed before it expires, as 4 total sets of towers will need to be soaked. By the end of the mechanic, you will have done defamation, shared sentence, far tether, and close tether. Every time a debuff expires on you, you receive a debugger buff. This buff prevents you from receiving the debuff that gave it to you. This is how we end the passing of debuffs at the end of the mechanic. This may seem like a lot, but it's really just a circle of 4 mechanics that lead into each other, and you start at a random point. Now every time the debuffs resolve, we will set up the party like this. Have the defamations behind the center of the tower that matches their rot. Max melee is fine. Shared sentence players will also have rot, and stand in the tower that matches their color, positioning close to the other tower of their color. Far tether will stand on the outside edges of the defamation towers. Close tether will stand between the shared sentence towers. A helpful callout or macro here is red is defamation, blue is defamation. If red is defamation, red tethers go to red towers, and blue tethers go to blue towers. If blue is defamation, red tethers go to blue towers, and blue tethers go to red towers. Always remember, if you have a rot debuff, you go to the tower that matches its color. Feel free to leave either of these images up to help you during your prog. As for the order of mechanics, if you have defamation first, you will then get short tether, then you will receive shared sentence, then far tether, which receives defamation, creating a loop. You can start the phase with any of the 4 mechanics, but they will always cycle in this order. Now, let's try running through a real example. Let's start by coming in from transition. We sidestep into the AoE and down into the blue. Next, we go to our clock spot. Here we receive our debuffs and have a few seconds to sort ourselves out. Take this time to identify whether defamation is red or defamation is blue. Here, blue is defamation. We hit our little macro, and now we have a reminder of what to do for the entire mechanic. Our first mechanic is far tether, so we are going to stand on the outside of the defamation towers. It's important to wait a few seconds and let rot players move first, so you don't have any accidental passes. Now, anytime you do almost anything in this phase, you are given a vuln up. It's very short, only 1 second, so we pause between each action, such as breaking a tether, defamation going off, or shared stacks. Defamation explodes, and we stand on the player to receive their rot. We move past them to show that we have the rot and allow them room for theirs to expire. On the other side, the short tether is doing the same thing, and the movement causes it to break. The vuln from the short tether falls off, and we break our tether. Rots go off. This repeats 4 times in total, so let's do each. We now have rot, so we want to be the first to go to our tower. We have blue rot, so we will be going to the blue tower. It's important to try and identify who else has your rot, so you can go to the correct tower without any mishaps. Here, it's obvious that we go right and they go left. We have defamation, so we stand behind the center of our tower. The tether takes rot off us, waits for a moment, then breaks their tether. Rots go off. Tower 2 done. Now we have short tether. Since it is blue defamation, we will go to the red tower, making sure to wait for the rot players to move before we go. The stacks resolve, we take our rot and break our tether. We move to let rots explode while far tether breaks. Tower 3 done. Now, the 4th tower is done slightly different. We need to end the cycle of debuffs since this is the last set of towers. To do so, we have everyone but the defamation players go to the non-defamation towers. Since defamation is blue, everyone goes to red. This really only changes the position of the far tethers. Have them stacked with the shared sentence players. It's free mitigation, so why not? You no longer have to worry about rot passing, so you can go straight to your spot. After everything goes off, the far tethers instantly break, so you pause, then short tether breaks and you're done. Just watch out for the final rot explosion. The boss casts Critical Error. What this does is give everyone who is not immune to defamation a defamation debuff. This is why we have to resolve the mechanic in the specific way that we do. Now we move on to the next big mechanic of this phase, Oversampled Wave Cannon, also known as Monitors. During this, Omega will be cleaving 1/2 of the arena. He will cleave all players he hits. Additionally, 3 players will have monitors spawn on the left or right side of their character. If there are 2 people in the cleave, only those players will be hit. If there are more, then the selection will be random among those players. If there are less, it will be fully random. The remaining 5 players receive nothing. The way to resolve this is by having each player be hit by exactly 1 monitor as they give a vuln. To do so, we line up from north to south in our light party order. So, healer, range, melee, tank, tank, melee, ranged, healer. Make sure you stand a little to the side, as Omega's hitbox will obscure players. The 3 players marked with monitors will step towards the boss monitor. Then, all players will fill in this order from north to south. When selected by a monitor, all players will be hit with a moderate-sized explosion, so make sure you do not overlap. There isn't much you can do other than memorize the spots and go to them, or leave an image like this on your second monitor if you have one. One tip is that if you're in the bottom 4 of players, you may find it easier to count from south. As an example, if you're in the bottom 4 players and you're the only monitor, you're taking the 3rd spot, since both monitors must be above you. It's very important to respect the boss cast bar. Pause for a moment when it's about to go off with the correct facing. Greedy players be warned. The boss will follow this with Eon Efflux, This is his Enrage cast. Best of luck! Now we can move on to phase 4. This is a very short phase, only about 55 seconds. So let's go over what is generally happening. Omega reconfigures itself and casts Wave Cannon. During the cast, 2 random players will be marked with stack. This is a trick the first time you see it, as it resolves later. What happens at the end of the cast bar is all players are hit with line AoEs. These AoEs will hit in the same spot again a few seconds later. So we wait for the line AoE, then we collapse into 2 stacks. As this goes off, you can see that the earlier radiating AoE is beginning to happen again. We will need to watch out for this as the mechanic progresses. In total, we will repeat the process of line AoE into stack 3 times. For the first stack, you can ignore the radiating AoE entirely. While spread before the second stack, the radiating AoE will clip just inside the boss hitbox. So as you get hit, step in, then rotate to your stacks. On the final spread, the radiating AoE is hitting after the stacks fully resolve. So get hit by your stack, pause for half a second, then move in. Now let's talk about how the resolution of the mechanic works, since the stack markers are random. First, have your spreads be like this: tank, ranged, healer, melee, from north to south. We will take the stacks south, the exact spots being halfway between south and southwest or southeast. Now, let's talk about what happens if 2 stacks appear on the same side. We will have the southernmost stack flex. This means the shortest walking distance for all players. But this would cause an imbalanced 5-3 split. So we also have the melees on the lookout for a swap. If a melee side has no stacks, they know to also swap so that the stacks are balanced. This provides a 4-4 split, and you're done. The hardest part of this phase is meeting the DPS check. You have 2 options based on what you decided to do earlier. If you use 2 sets of 2-minute buffs on P3, then you can LB3 here. If you use LB3 during P3, then you should have your sets of 2-minute buffs here. Both are similar, and it's really up to your group and which you struggle with the most. This can vary a lot with player skill and party composition. This took a bit longer than expected to get video of, but I hope it helped you and that you enjoy it. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe. See you in phase 5.